at least the watch without the band in Pulp Fiction, I can imagine sliding that, up and hiding it.
Wait.
What,
You'd
the
rather slide the
Yes.
face of a watch up your
Yes.
up your butt versus a ring.
Remember when we first met John McClane? Argyle picked him up from the plane and took him down the Nakatomi Tower at the Christmas party. And the terrorists were overzealous, but it was sweet when they killed Ellis. And with a little help from Alan, John McClane kicked out.
Welcome back to Shat the Movies, the podcast where we answer the question, were the movies we love and growing up really that good? Have you ever caught yourself thinking, why do they make movies like they used to? Can you still remember spending your Friday night searching for the perfect movie rental at Blockbuster Video? Do you even remember what Blockbuster Video was? If you answered yes and this is the podcast for you, I am one of your three co-hosts, Roger Roper, and alongside me are my two co-hosts, Big D, Dick Ebert,
Good evening.
and Gene Little John Lyons.
You, 10:45, and bring a friend.
And each week, the audience selects from 6 movie choices that we then break out our race car VHS tape rewinders and watch the movie that tallied the highest number of votes. At the end of each podcast, the three of us will provide you the number of wipes the movie would take to get off your respective butts. So thank you so much for listening. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and share with a friend. It's how we help the podcast grow. You can also check out our other podcasts, On the Throne, Taboo FX, American Gods, and Westworld, where we review TV shows as part of the Shat on TV network. You can subscribe and find out all the information at our website, shatontv.com. Shat on TV, right? It's shatontv.com?
It is. You got it. Uh-huh.
All right. That being said,
You got through the easy part of it.
yeah.
Shit.
Yeah. All right. Big D, what are we doing tonight?
So this was suggested by one of our listeners a few months back. So it was when we only had 4 movie choices. And it was the Best of Morgan Freeman. In last place, Driving Miss Daisy. Second place, Glory from 89. Then The Unforgiven at 34%. And the winner at 36.3%. Prince of Thieves, Robin Hood from 1991.
Yeah, so this is the kind of movie where it makes me happy that we're doing this podcast, because as I recall, my memory of this movie is much better than what it turned out to be.
You know, I went back and watched the trailers for all 4 of these movies. I recall all 4 of them being good, and based on the trailers, all 4 of them are terrible. Even Unforgiven, which I thought remember being great, like Clint Eastwood, Morgan Freeman, like based on the trailer with Gene Hack, it just doesn't hold up.
No, I got to think that Glory was good.
Well, it was good. It was good for 1989. But if you look at it, it's hokey. They beat you over the head with the message. None of these are good.
You were actually able to make it through Glory. Glory is the Civil War Blade Runner. No one can ever get through an entire sitting.
So you're not intimidated by Matthew Broderick as a Civil War, what was he, a captain?
Civil War.
All I remember about Glory is that people told me if you watch long enough, some dude gets his head blown off. And that was what kept me awake as a child.
Yeah. Well, I actually have gone back recently and watched Unforgiven because I remembered it was great. It's not. I think this is shortly after we watched Tombstone last year. Unforgiven does not hold up. It's very slow. It plods along terribly. Yeah, not great.
Yeah, so we've been getting, like, this vote was over 1,000 votes, and it was close. And though Unforgiven is a good movie by most accounts, I don't think it does well for this podcast, because there's only so much you can say about a good movie. But when you get a shit show like we have on our hands tonight, these are usually the most fun, because this movie, oh my God, was a dumpster fire.
Well, Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves is a 1991 American romantic action adventure film. Like, it's a romantic action adventure film. The film is an iteration of the legendary English folktale and was directed by Kevin Reynolds. The film's principal cast includes Kevin Costner as Robin Hood, Morgan Freeman as Azeem, Christian Slater as Will Scarlett, Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio. I missed up Mastrantonio. How do I say it?
I've been saying Mastrantonio.
Mastrantonio.
See, it's easy when you say it like that.
Yeah, it's
like
easy.
Master Antonio.
and Maid Marian. She's Maid Marian. And of course, Alan Rickman is the sheriff of Nottingham. Gentlemen, this film grossed over $390 million worldwide. It was the second highest grossing film of 1991. But the film's song, Everything I Do It For You by Bryan Adams, was nominated for the Academy Award for Best Song, but unfortunately lost to Beauty and the Beast. But it did win the Grammy Award for Best Song written specifically for a movie, motion picture, or television. Prince of Thieves was also nominated for 2 Golden Raspberry Awards. Kevin Costner won the Best Actor Award for his performance as Robin Hood, beating out Vanilla Ice in Cool as Ice, while Christian Slater also received a nomination for Worst Supporting Actor for his performance, but he did not win the Golden Raspberry. We always ask the question, where were you? What were your memories of this movie? Big D, we'll start with you.
So I was graduating high school at this point, and I guess I wasn't into Robin Hood. I don't remember it. The only thing I remember is the song. And back in the day, kids, before you had your iPod and iTunes, you would have to get out the tape decks and make your mixtape. This was one of my go-to songs on any of my romantic mixtapes, along with Extreme's More Than Words. Those were my 2 go-to. But as far as this movie, until watching this 2.5 hours, I did not remember much about it, and I want to forget what I've already seen.
Gene, how about yourself?
Yeah, much like Big D, I recorded this off the radio. The song "Everything I Do It For You," and that was kind of my first foray into the movie. I wasn't really familiar with the tale of Robin Hood. A lot of the kids I grew up around had seen Disney's Robin Hood. I hadn't even seen that. So when this came on screen, I understood like it was a parable, but when they made the allusions to the history with the tapestry and the opening credits and stuff, I was like, okay, this is actual history. So as a child, up until probably like my late teens, this was my concept of the Crusades. I'd never heard of them before, and I thought Robin Hood was like a real thing.
Wait a minute, you're Persian. How have you never heard of the Crusades?
Well, I'm Persian doesn't mean I'm Muslim.
No, I'm just like, so they didn't teach. You grew up in the Arizona public school system. They never taught about the Crusades.
All right, before you diss the Arizona public school system, it's during the Crusades they didn't attack Tehran. They were attacking like Istanbul.
Yeah,
and that's way further west.
Turkey.
Yeah.
Istanbul
didn't attack Tehran.
Great.
Okay.
All of a sudden, the Florida public school district is coming into question.
That's right. Well, this was 91, so we were in 7th grade? Gene?
I was in 5th grade.
You were in 5th grade in 91.
Yeah, I was 11. Yeah.
So, all right. So I'm a year older than you are, so 12. Was I in 6th grade?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I definitely remember going on a movie date where my parents had to drop me off.
And then you fucked some chick and went to Chili's?
That's how it all started. But this was also like every middle school dance that year. That was the one like, ooh, I'm gonna dance with a girl to this song. But I remember being a fan of this movie. I remember thinking like, this is Kevin Costner in his prime. This is, you got Dances with Wolves. You've got Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. You've got Waterworld. I mean, he was the apex predator in Hollywood.
And you know what's weird about this is, you know how when we watched the Christian Bale Batman, we're like, oh, now Batman's not goofing around anymore. Like, it's not cartoony. Like, this is the real Batman. This is like if Batman were really real. That's how I felt about this. I was like, okay, they're not goofing around. This is not cartoon Robin Hood, man. This is the real deal.
This is an Errol Flynn in green tights.
Wait, are we talking 11-year-old Gene, or are we
Yes.
talking Gene today?
No, 11-year-old.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
But hey, can we admit though, the song is still good.
No, the song is terrible.
It's a good song.
It is
Come on.
not a good song.
I will defend Bryan Adams. His album Reckless, I loved it as a kid. He's my favorite Canadian artist next to Alanis Morissette.
Yeah, the second you hear the piano doing the dee-dee-dee-dee-dee, you know exactly what song it is. That voice, unmistakable. It's a great voice.
Yeah,
Guys.
but if you watch the trailer, which we're coming into, there is no hint of romance. Because I was trying to figure out, is this movie tongue-in-cheek? Are they having fun with us? Are they trying to be a serious period piece, action, drama? And I watched the trailer. The trailer is dead serious.
Oh, yeah. They take themselves very seriously.
The music is foreboding. It's dun, dun, dun. It's an adventure. It's going to be riveting. And then the movie is something else. So I really think they wanted it to be serious, and it just went off the rails.
Yeah.
But, yeah, you'll listen to it now, and you'll wonder if this is the same movie.
Big D, play the trailer.
A time of war. A time of homecoming. A time of tyrants. A time when the only way to uphold justice was to break the law. He gave the people the courage to fight. Who stood for freedom became a legend. Kevin Costner, Morgan Freeman, Christian Slater, Alan Rickman, and Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio. Hood Prince of Thieves.
Robin of Locksley, an English nobleman who joined Richard the Lionheart, King of England in the Third Crusade, is imprisoned in Jerusalem along with his comrade Peter Dubois. Facing the amputation of his hand by the Ayyubid prison guards, Robin escapes with Peter, saving the life of a Moor named Azeem in the process. Robin, Peter, and Azeem escape through a sewer and into an alley, but Peter is shot and mortally wounded by an archer. Before making his last stand against the approaching guards, he has Robin swear to protect his sister, Marion. Robin returns to England with Azeem, who has vowed to accompany him until Azeem's life debt to Robin is paid.
So if this sounds like a riveting scene in these crusade prisons, it's not. As the resident long hair of the podcast, I can tell you that if you're ever in a situation where it's sweaty, it's grimy, you're locked up in a subterranean prison, your hair is going to be quite matted. It's going to lack volume. The second Kevin Costner came on screen with that beard and that wig, I'm dying laughing. I mean, his hair is huge. It's that 90s rock and roll hair, and you could tell that they're trying to appeal to that 90s audience. And the only thing worse than that in this scene was the blood. Every spot of blood in this movie is like ketchup colored. It looks comical.
Yeah, so they start off with the tapestry. And I don't think it's period appropriate music, but I'm like, oh shit, okay, No,
I'll defend that Morgan Creek theme music till the day I die. That's a great orchestral ballad.
No, I'm not saying it's bad. I'm saying it felt more like a Braveheart.
Yeah.
Like I was going to see Braveheart version. Yes, it was going to be epic. And it immediately goes to the dungeon fight scene, which all I could think about was Aladdin. It looked like if Disney had done, watch, when they climb out of the sewer after their escape, I was waiting for somebody to bust in a song, Arabian Nights. It was straight up, it looked like a Disney set. The villains looked like the bad guys in Aladdin. It was terrible.
Okay, well, here's my question. Did the ancient city of Jerusalem have sewers?
I would doubt it.
Like,
we would
seriously.
need to check.
Right? Like, it feels like this movie got not only historically the story of Robin of Locksley incorrect, but then it missed cues like this. Like, they escaped through the sewers. That's such a trope when it comes to big escapes is, we'll ditch the guards by going into the sewer and we'll come up through a manhole.
Raj, I did the research, and actually the Ayyubid dynasty did have sewers. It was actually one of their inventions that helped them keep their cities cleaner than other competing cities.
With cement manhole covers?
Manhole covers.
Yeah, there were Ninja Turtles in there too, and,
Right.
and there were giant rats that sewer sharks had to go in there and kill. It was crazy.
But it seems like this fight down there, they were trying to shock us because it kicks right into a dude screaming. We have the scenes of cutting the hands off. It's supposed to be dramatic. I just found it was a joke. There's like that pit of fire that they have next year with the hot coals where they're heating up the sword to amputate the hands. The minute I saw it, I said, oh, somebody's fallen into that one.
And not only does the guy fall into it, but he immediately, his whole body catches fire like he's been bathing in lighter fluid.
Yeah, the Turks are very combustible.
So what I want to know during this escape scene, though, is that Peter, as he's shot, he's dying, and he gives Robin his ring. He's like, take this ring. And I'm like, wait a minute. Is this like a Christopher Walken moment in Pulp Fiction? Where was Peter keeping this ring? Like, those guards would have taken that away from you in a second.
Yeah, they were down there for 5 years. Okay? That ring was square. It had a lot of jewels. At least the watch without the band in Pulp Fiction, I can imagine sliding that, up and hiding it. That ring.
Wait.
What,
You'd
the
rather slide
Yes.
the face of a watch up your
Yes.
up your butt versus a ring.
Yeah, I think it was oval. The watch face is almost oval, whereas this jewel was a giant, like, rectangle. That it looked like you would imagine. Would you rather stick that watch or a large Lego block? That's what it was.
Here's the deal. Jewelry is overinflated. The value of jewelry completely overvalued. There really is no extrinsic value to that. It's all intrinsic value. And to me, I feel like there's no amount of jewelry. There's no sentimentality attached to any particular object to where I feel the need to stick it up my butt for years at a time. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. Maybe I have attachment issues.
Did anybody have the problem that they've been now in prison, chained up for 5 years? They'd be a bit emaciated. Peter has a miraculous recovery. He can barely stand before he gets up and out of the sewer. He immediately turns into, I'm going to take this one for England, and runs at them. I was like, there's no way that Robin Hood would be fighting anyone off with a sword in that condition.
Yeah. Also, if you want to be historically correct, there was no Azeem in The Tale of Robin Hood. The actual screenwriters for this movie based this tale on the 1984 to 86 series on the BBC about Robin Hood, where there was Nazir, but that was just a character that they made up for the TV show. So they got that wrong. But also the Crusades were not great. Like, they were pretty terrible things, and Richard the Lionheart was kind of a big bastard.
Forget about, there's historical problems left and right with some technology, with some of the medical procedures that Azeem does later in the movie. The shields, the armory is all time inappropriate, but we have to agree and get it out there. The worst is the way that they butcher the English language and Kevin Costner's attempt at any kind of authentic British accent.
Wait a minute. You guys actually heard an attempt to speak in an English accent? Because I did not.
Yeah, I would say that Costner's accent kind of oscillated throughout the movie. Now, Christian Slater made no attempt at all.
None.
Right.
But I think Costner did at some points try to do it. But, to Big D's point, there's a scene where they're capturing Will Scarlett that we'll get to later. But one of Nottingham's men literally says, "Hold thy fire," which not only sounds stupid, but "hold your fire" is a reference to gunpowder, which wasn't introduced to Europe until the 13th century. So these men had arrows and crossbows with bolts, and they said, "Hold thy fire." And then even if you're willing to give them the benefit of the doubt, later Friar Tuck looks at gunpowder like it's magic. So clearly this is not a normal thing in Europe. It's like they really cut corners on scripting here.
So I found out from, I always do research, that the director had wanted Kevin Costner to not even attempt to use a dialect.
Right.
And Kevin Costner felt, I guess, coming off of Dances with Wolves, that he's a serious actor. He needs to try. His dialect coach lasted like 3 weeks. It was so bad he couldn't do it. Kevin Costner kept trying to force it in, and at one point he just gives it up. So yes, it does oscillate. There's scenes where he's trying, and then others where he just gave it up. But Babbel did, Babbel, the app
Right.
They went out and they got, I think it was 100 actors, British and American, to go and judge who did the best job. Kevin Costner, as bad as he was not the worst. The worst was Dick Van Dyke as the chimney sweep Bert and Mary Poppins. But Robin Hood's was voted the second worst in movie history.
And the best was Brad Pitt in Snatch.
Oh, he was pretty good.
We got Dags.
No, but they say they voted the best was Meryl Streep as Margaret Thatcher in The Iron Lady, Christian Bale, Dark Knight. They also said Hugh Laurie in House and Andrew Lincoln in Walking Dead were good.
Okay.
But Kevin Costner, it's anytime he's screaming, it's regular Kevin Costner. I'm picturing like Tin Cup, where he's like yelling at the caddy.
Tin Cup, great movie. That's good Kevin Costner.
Yeah, this isn't Tin Cup.
Well, in England, with King Richard still away, in France, the cruel Sheriff of Nottingham rules over the land, aided by his cousin Guy of Gisborne, the Witch of Mortiana.
Mortiana.
Mortiana, thank you. And the corrupt Bishop of Hereford. At Locksley Castle, Robin's father, who is loyal to King Richard, is killed by the sheriff's men after refusing to join him. Robin returns to England to find his father dead, his home in ruins, and the sheriff and his men oppressing the people.
So my first question going into this is, Azeem and Robin escape, and the next thing we do is we see them in England, and somehow they've gotten a ship, they've gotten men, they got weapons, new clothes, all that stuff. The only thing I can think is maybe Robin had an account with the Knights Templar, and they just he just made a withdrawal right there.
No, but I'm just thankful that we didn't need to see that 4-month journey to England. Because the movie's 2.5 hours long. If they tried to incorporate that, the movie would have been 4 hours long. But why did Robin bring Azeem with him all the way to England to only try to knock him out and then have the 4 guys drag him back across the channel? Isn't that a dick move? Just leave him behind. Say, man, you don't have to follow me.
I've got a feeling that just like part of some things that may have gotten cut off is Robin Hood's attempts to consistently get Azeem to get out of his life debt. Like, I feel like there's all these like things that Azeem is constantly having to like get out of.
Yeah, if Robin were smart, he would have paid somebody to attack him, right. And then Azeem would kill that guy, and then he'd be like, all right, cool, see you later.
Yeah, but Robin's already got his gear on. That outfit, it looks like it's bedazzled with studs. It looks like something you would see at like a jean jacket convention. It does not look like anything I've seen in any history book or any other movie from the period.
Whoa, there's a jean jacket convention?
There is, yeah. It's a denim convention.
How the fuck have I
in
not
New York.
been invited to this thing?
You know who plays at the jean jacket convention? Bryan Adams.
Shit, I'm going.
But my problem that I have with the movie is that, especially when it comes to the Sheriff of Nottingham, number one, Alan Rickman is doing whatever he wants, right? Like he's decided he doesn't care about his performance. He's just going to go way over the top with it. But also, did you guys get a sense that this plot, not only did it have nothing to do with like Robin Hood, but you could insert other historical events in for it and it would be the same exact movie. For instance, I argue that this could have been the tale of the American Revolution, and Robin Hood could have been like a soldier, kind of like in the army.
Like The Patriot?
It's like The Patriot. This movie is The Patriot, Prince of Thieves.
You talk about Alan Rickman. He is in a different movie. They must have been giving him direction, and he just said, fuck it, I'm going to do what I want. Because his role, and every time he's on screen, does not match the rest of the film.
What I noticed is that weird pause thing that he does in every movie. He did it in Harry Potter and stuff. I didn't realize he was doing it as early as 1991. A lot of actors, they develop their trademark thing after a while. If you look at, really early Christopher Walken, if you look at really early Clint Eastwood, like they develop these tics. Jack Nicholson's another great example. Alan Rickman's been doing that shit since day one. The join us or die.
But do you like, I found myself annoyed. He does that stupid, like confused, wide mouth grin and the camera always zooms in. It's like Hans Gruber. He does it in every movie.
Now, the thing is I love that he does it. It's the director fucked up. The cinematography wasn't good. The fact that he's doing it is great. It's just you don't have to put as much emphasis on him while he's doing it. Then it becomes a subtle little, joke between the audience and Alan Rickman, a moment of delight rather than something that's, right in your face.
Well, didn't I read somewhere that Alan Rickman turned this movie down 2 times before he finally accepted on the basis that he could rewrite some of his parts and ad-lib as much as he wanted. Like, he demanded that he get basically free reign to do anything he wanted with the character, and that's how they were able to get Alan Rickman.
Well, it ran into problems because when they tested it for the audience loved Alan Rickman and didn't like Kevin Costner. So Kevin Costner forced them to reduce. If you ever watch, there's an extra 15 minutes that I think you saw, Raj.
I did. I saw the extended version.
Which focuses on Alan Rickman, some backstory with the witch. So Kevin Costner was pissed off that people were liking, Rickman more than him.
Yeah. What's interesting is, like, Alan Rickman is, I guess, leading a cult of people in this scene where he's attacking Robin of Locksley's father. It looks to be like medieval KKK members in white sheets coming to get him, and then that's the whole rebellion that he's leading, is a bunch of these white guys.
And I was super pissed about that scene because Locksley Sr. comes out of the castle on horseback with armor, armed, and he's slain by a bunch of dudes in robes with torches. And if anything, if you're going to make that happen, show us the battle. You spent 2.5 hours on this movie, and you just glanced right over the battle. I would have loved to see him go down slashing him.
Fuck, forget about the battle. The point of a castle is protection. You get to the door, you see these dudes outside, turn your horse around and go back in the castle. Drop the gate. They're not going to lay siege. Does he not have any kind of, not bannermen, but have any soldiers or anyone else working in the castle?
He's got the one guy, Duncan.
Yeah, and this is the thing about the movie. Big D, you talked about the movie doesn't know what it wants to be. You've got this scene where Nottingham is with this half-naked girl and he's being kind of rapey. And it seemed really sanitized, right? Like, there's no nudity. He's not, like, really grabbing her or anything. It's just kind of she's scared and he's just looming over her. So you're like, oh, the movie's, like, fairly sanitized. It's going to be that sort of a PG sort of thing. And then right after that, you've got, like, Locksley Sr.'s, like, dead body, like, in the hanging cage, looks like an Iron Maiden. And then Duncan's eyes have been plucked. And you're like, holy shit. Like, okay, this is pretty gruesome. Like, movie, make up your fucking mind.
So imagine if instead they did Alan Rickman. What about the actor that played Guy of was it Gisborne?
Gisborne, yeah.
The guy who plays Guy of Gisborne, Michael Wilcott. He's creepy. He's frightening. I think if they flip those roles and have him as the big bad, it would have been a much better film.
No, Alan Rickman, I think, makes this movie, because this movie is already so bad, it makes sense. That
listen, he makes it laughable so you can get through it, but as a movie, a coherent theme, no way. But did we need this whole sorcery storyline?
It makes more sense in the extended version of why there is, but it really doesn't add to the story. In fact, I would have liked to have seen, because in the Robin Hood lore, the Sheriff of Nottingham is not the one leading the rebellion. He's just the muscle man for Prince John, who's like the cousin of Richard the Lionheart, right? Isn't that the whole, or nephew of Richard the Lionheart?
Yeah, he's not the mastermind.
Right, yeah. The mastermind was Prince John, which, guess which version got that correct? The goddamn Disney version. That's right.
What animal was he?
He was he was like a lion, right?
No, Prince John.
Prince John was a lion.
And what was the Sheriff of Nottingham?
Sheriff of Nottingham was a weasel, right?
I don't know. I never saw it.
You've never seen that?
No, I don't. I don't watch cartoons.
Yeah, it's very good. You should totally check it out. In fact, I did Sheriff of Nottingham when I worked with the characters at Walt Disney World.
I thought you were a face.
I did some face character as well. After telling Marion of Peter's demise and while fleeing the sheriff's forces afterwards, Robin and Azeem encounter a band of outlaws hiding in Sherwood Forest, led by Little John. Among them is among the band of merry men is Will Scarlett, who holds a belligerent grudge against Robin. Robin ultimately assumes command of the group, encourages his men to fight against Nottingham, and trains them to defend themselves. They rob soldiers and convoys that pass through the forest, then distribute the wealth among the poor.
Okay, I want to take a moment to talk about all the Duncan is blind jokes.
Yeah.
The movie is joking about an old man who had his eyes plucked from their sockets and his eyelids sewn shut. I don't understand how it becomes comic relief over and over and over again. Like, blindness is not funny to begin with, but then the manner in which he became blind and his old frail state. Again, the movie doesn't know when to make a joke and when to be serious. It's just wrong.
How do you think they removed his eyeballs? Do you think they did it with a spoon?
Probably.
Not only Duncan probably raised him. So why is Robin mocking him and making fun of him, and they make blind jokes?
Because Robin was a dick kid.
Yeah, he was.
So, yeah, come on. You don't think that he's going to mistreat the help? Of course he is.
Yeah, but keep in mind that making fun of a blind guy is not nearly as bad as rape, which we'll get to later on, but this movie finds both, fodder for comedy.
Is this the second time in the podcast we've mentioned that we're going to get to rape later on? This is getting, the podcast is now getting creepy. When Marion first comes on screen, she's in a suit of armor. You know it's her. That's how these movies work. When somebody gets attacked and the face isn't showing, there's going to be the reveal, and it's, a beautiful woman. And so, but in this scene, I'm like, oh, cool. They're going to make Marion like a badass. Like she's going to have some role in this fight. They allude to the fact that she can fight, and then her gloved hand is barely held over a candle, and she screams and drops her weapon. And you go, wait a minute. She's never going to fight again, and she doesn't.
Oh, but they did add a sound effect of like sizzling bacon.
Yeah.
So that tells you, that the flesh is cooking under that leather glove. But the one line that Kevin Costner has that really made me laugh was when the decoy Maid Marian comes out on the upper deck, and he says, "Show yourself."
Sarah?
And she walks out, and she's gross, and he goes, Whoa, time has treated you well, my lady." I was like, okay. That was so
See, I didn't have as much problem that I had with the blind Walter jokes as I did with the let's make fun of how terrible Sarah looks compared to everyone else. How many that it felt a little uncomfortable, the fat shaming and the
shut up,
and the ugly and the face shaming as well. Sarah's she's like a Brienne of Tarth, right? She's a very capable horse rider. She can wield a sword very well. She's like a bodyguard.
Please, nobody was commenting on her girth. It was the welts and the sores that were arranged on her face that made her look rough. And as far as you saying she's a great swordswoman, she gets knocked out with one blow over the back of the head. She was not Brienne of Tarth.
To be fair, I think Maid Marian is really the only attractive female in this entire movie. The movie went through great lengths to make sure that every other woman in the movie looked as homely as possible.
Like Fanny?
Oh, God. Fanny made me hurt.
Okay, so this block in the movie is kind of large. So we cover a lot of ground. So we meet another big character. So I'm not, steeped in the lore of Robin Hood. But when we get to Little John, I'm thinking he's going to be, formidable. He's going to be somebody of stature who's going to intimidate you. This actor looked nothing like any of those. Am I wrong? Does the book say he's like an average looking guy who's just skilled with a bow staff?
No, I mean, he's supposed to be a bigger guy, hence the juxtaposition in the name, right? It's like there's an irony there, Little John being a big guy. But the thing with it is that I think they wanted him to look big. The hair was big, the beard was big. Like, I think they were trying to, make it clear. But I expected some sort of an Andre the Giant sort of guy, and I did remember him. I remembered in my head. I mean, it must have been an effective trick because I remembered in my head him being pretty big, and he really wasn't.
Oh, he's wearing layers. He has I looked at him. He's wearing 8 different layers of clothing. You could cast anyone in that role. Get somebody of a decent size. And that
who can swim.
Yes. You live near a river. You should learn to swim. That's kind of a weakness that's glaring. But that wig and that fake beard, the second he gets wet, the water's just beating off of it. Terrible.
Well, one thing that is majestic about this movie and really adds to the lore of just how terrible it is the toy line that's associated with this movie. We posted a couple things on Twitter showing just how terrible it is, but they made all the actors go and pose for the photos of the action figures that they are representing. The actor who plays Little John, swear to God, his picture looks like Hagrid, like a young Hagrid when he's in his senior year at Hogwarts.
Yeah, young, strapping Hagrid.
Right.
If you ever want to research anything, I'll put a link to it about the toys because we could do a full 30-minute podcast on how bad the toys are and how they just, what did they call, what I say it was called? Was it kit smashing? Is that the term?
Kit smashing is, yeah, absolutely.
Where they don't want to take the time to make toys like from a custom unique mold. So they just take bits and pieces from other toys and put them together. Like the Sherwood Forest playset is actually the Ewok village. It's the identical playset. The Friar Tuck toy is a grammarian guard with a human head. So I'll put a link into this if you want to Google it. It's hilarious.
So lazy. It is. I don't. First of all, as a kid, would you have gotten excited for the Robin Hood playset? Like you were 11, Gene. Is that what you asked for that Christmas?
I mean, I think I was pretty much a G.I. Joe man at 11, but I don't think I would have minded the Robin Hood, playset as long as it had enough like trap doors and swingy things. But the thing is with you can't blame the toy makers because the movie was equally lazy. I mean, the Merry Men's hideout did kind of look like an Ewok village with all the swinging and the platforms and all that stuff. It's not that far. It's very derivative.
What can we get that the forest cannot provide? And then all of a sudden they're making steel.
Well, how long would it take to forge like 200 plus swords, maybe make 1,000 arrows, and to train all these regular town folk? Because they do it in a quick montage. Are we talking, a week, 2 days, a month? How long is this taking to gear up for war?
I mean, the season appears to be the same, so it can't be more than, a month, maybe 2.
You think they did all that in a month or 2?
I mean, that's what the movie is alleging, that's how quickly it happened. But yeah, I mean, they were very adamant about showing that these are a bunch of goofballs when Robin first encounters them, and suddenly they're the fighting force. But, I think they did at least go to the length of not making them too formidable. I mean, when they encounter real resistance, they don't fare so well.
So what's Robin Hood's motivation here? He wants to avenge the death of his father, correct? Does he want to kill the sheriff?
I mean, that's the thing is, even from the get-go, when he first encounters Guy of Gisborne, it seems like all Robin wants is to return home, to have his lands, and to have justice on his lands. And then when he discovers his father's dead, I think he wants to avenge his father's death. But I don't think that he had it in his mind to be some sort of massive, revolutionary. I think even Azeem makes a bigger claim to freedom than Robin does.
But Robin has a chance when he's meeting with the priest, and there's a knock at the door and it opens. The sheriff is right in front of Robin. Robin has time to take out his dagger, and instead of slitting his throat, stabbing him in the heart, he decides to give him a little comical cosmetic scar to remember him by. If he cuts his throat and kills him there, isn't the war over?
So the only thing I can think of is that they're in a church, and so Robin doesn't want to kill a man in the church, but he does, it does lead to a little bit of banter between the two of them. I think that, again, this is a tell as to what the movie was trying to be, this sort of at times sort of a playful, Robin's a bit of a rascal sort of thing. It doesn't work, but I think that's what they were trying to do.
And I love the way this movie plays loose with physics. Did you see the rope? So he now cuts the sheriff's cheek. There is a rope that's probably 4 inches in circumference. It looks like something that would be on a ship, like a clipper ship that would hold the sails up. He takes one swipe with that same dagger. It cuts through clean the rope, and it just lifts him comically to the roof. How does he get off the roof? What the hell is that dagger made out of? Where the movie tries to be serious, they then turn around and do these just gravity and physics-defying feats that pulled me out of the scene, but maybe that's me, a 40-year-old man, maybe 11-year-old Gene would have been jumping out of his seats and giggling.
Yeah, if you go back and look at the 30s Errol Flynn Robin Hood, even that seemed to have more believable action sequences than this. They really blew it in the times that it counted. And there are other ways that you could have got him out of the situation, or like you said, create a world in which that doesn't seem that abnormal, right? When you got movies like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, you don't watch that and go, oh, well, nobody could ever do that. You go, okay, I understand. The world that we're in is fantastic. Right. That this sort of thing happens all the time. And it's about creating, it's the world building part that they messed up on.
Well, one of their early targets is Friar Tuck, who subsequently joins these merry men. Marion begins to sympathize with the band and renders Robin any aid she can muster. Meanwhile, Robin's successes infuriate the sheriff, who increases the mistreatment of the people, resulting in greater local support for Robin Hood.
So at this point in the movie, you've got this rivalry developing between Nottingham and Robin Hood, and at times it works and times it doesn't. And there's actually one exchange that kind of encapsulates the whole thing, and that's when Nottingham does that famous line you guys alluded to: "I'm going to cut your heart out with a spoon." And this is like one of those dumb lines you hear like LARPers yelling out, like when you go to like Renfest and stuff. This is a goth club, like, you know, people say that like, "Oh, I'm so silly, I'm gonna," you know, and it bothers me so much. And thank God Robin responded with "Then it begins," which I thought was pretty cool. Like, I was like, you know, he's yelling at him, and then it begins, and he scampers off, and that's the Robin Hood I want to see. The quick-witted, you know, quick-talking, merciless Robin Hood, and you don't see that the rest of the movie.
Yeah, but why a spoon cousin?
Why a spoon cousin?
Because it would hurt more.
Yeah, because it would hurt more.
You twit.
Yeah, but that
You
exactly.
baited us there. Nice.
That entire he baited you. I got it.
I'm slow at this time of night.
But that entire you know, exchange again, they took a joke that didn't even work to begin with, and then like a Saturday Night Live skit, they just dragged it out even more. And I also want to know, this guy of Gisborne, like, you know, as you guys said, he works in certain scenes. He's creepy. Every time he's on screen, the camera gets really close to his face, and it's kind of moving around. It reminded me of like the Adam Ant Goody Two Shoes video, where it's just like in the 80s when they couldn't keep the camera straight and they were just up everyone's nostrils. Very, very shitty camera work.
Oh, well, there's a scene early on where Robin and Azeem are kind of running away to go to the woods, and I guess they didn't have the shot, so the camera just zooms into the trees. Like, it follows them for a bit, and then the trees just get large. So this is something maybe they did in the 90s.
Well, the ADR in this movie is quite crazy. You just hear like the people in the background, like just screaming, just saying things. Look at him! Look what you've done! And like, there's no mouths moving, so you're like, wait a minute, is Robin Hood telepathically communicating with these new people? But also, we're introduced to Fanny, Little John's wife. And from her introduction on, all Little John does is scream either Fanny or my boy the rest of the movie.
Well, Fanny's pregnant, you know, so
Right.
a life in the trees has got to be difficult.
Yeah.
But they show us, and I appreciate that they did it, that Morgan Freeman's character, for this foreigner to come to your land, there's going to be some hatred. They don't want to share the drink with him. Not everybody's welcoming him in. So they needed something to make the merry men, you know, look at Azeem differently. But I don't know if I read this scene correct. So Fanny goes into labor. It's the baby is, I'm guessing, is a breech birth, that the feet are still down, so she can't give birth to the child. Did Azeem say, get a needle and thread? Was he going to give Fanny a C-section?
Yes, that's what he does.
Yeah, he says that he's seen it done on a horse before, so you know.
So he learned how to do a C-section from watching it done on a horse. Whereas, again, I researched, C-sections at this time usually resulted in the mother's death. You know, if Fanny survived this, she would not be up the next day running around the castle in some raid. It's just ridiculous. Why would they do it?
I think they're trying to show just how tough Fanny is.
That's right. She's a tough lad.
Yeah, the movie could have gone differently if you see Azeem come out of the hut covered in blood and everybody's crying.
Here's my problem with Azeem. How does he get a sword into what scathe? What do you keep your sword?
A
scabbard. How do you get that curved sword into your scabbard?
Maybe the top's open. It's not completely closed.
No, it doesn't make sense.
It does. If the opening is say the backside of it's a little wider, so you could fit it in. You see him take it in and out. Listen, the guy just gave a C-section, like 500 years too early. Don't worry about how he gets his sword in and out.
My problem is you can't have this character know what a C-section is if you can't get his curved giant sword out of a scabbard.
Well, one of the movie's, you know, basic underlying themes is the romance between Maid Marian and Robin. We need to believe that they have this romance, that they, you know, will get them both to do things that they normally wouldn't. Did you find it a bit creepy that she seems to fall in love with Robin just by looking at his bare ass as he's swimming? The camera freezes on her and she does this like and it's uncomfortably
Oh, my.
2 seconds long. Was this a
Right.
bit odd of a romance?
I don't think that she fell in love with him just because she saw his butt swimming. I think that she always had a crush on him because he tormented her as a child, and we know that's the path to a woman's heart is by tormenting her.
So did he get those killer tan lines in the dungeon for 5 years? You couldn't find an actor who was just evenly white. You had to find an actor who just had like that. You could see his ass was bare white and the rest of him was tan.
Yeah. Also, the cut scene from attractive, hunky butt Kevin Costner to the actual Kevin Costner being shown. Like that's the body you would have if you were in prison in Jerusalem.
Yes.
For 4 years.
Kevin
Like you would
Costner's
lose
real body.
all muscle mass in your shoulders and arms. Yeah. Well, the sheriff kills Gisborne for his failure to prevent the looting of several convoys and hires Celtic warriors from Scotland to assist his forces in assaulting the hideout. The sheriff manages to locate the outlaws' hideout and launches an attack, destroying the forest refuge and capturing most of the outlaws. He confines Marion when she tries to summon help from France. To consolidate his claim to the throne, the sheriff proposes to Marion, who is Richard's cousin, claiming that if she accepts, he will spare the lives of the captured outlaws. Nevertheless, several of the rebels are due to be executed by hanging as part of the wedding celebration. Among them captured is Will Scarlett, who makes a deal with the sheriff to find and kill Robin in exchange for his freedom.
So all throughout the movie, the sheriff's been power hungry. He wants to, assume control while the king's out. He's going to try to usurp and gain power. Where does he all of a sudden flip a switch and he's now planning on his heir and the whole marriage thing comes in?
I think his spoiler alert, in the extended version, the witch is his mother, his actual biological mother. But that's never explained in the regular cut, right? The theatrical cut.
No, you can tell that he's having a conversation with her that sounds like a mother bitching at her son.
Right, but I think in the theatrical release, it's hinted at the witch raised him. But in the extended version, they explain that he's originally thinks that she just raised him after his parents died, but she is actually his mom. But I think it's her that suggests.
Does this seem like a good plan?
To impregnate Maid Marian? Yeah, that's how empires were built.
Yeah, but aren't there still layers of relatives who would be next in the chain of command?
Then a cousin.
Yeah,
then the sheriff of Nottingham's seed. Yeah, no, I agree.
He would have to kill about 15 other people, and that might prove to be problematic.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. But the other thing is that I forgot that they even hired Celtic warriors.
That looked like LARPers to me. I've never been to one of these, but those outfits look pretty bad.
We've seen this before in other movies that we hate, namely The Highlander and Willow. And again, it's just remarkable how different those battle scenes are for something that we're used to today, like Lord of the Rings or even Game of Thrones, where you're like, oh, okay, this is much more visually impressive. These guys look like complete amateurs. It was pretty ridiculous. And what I loved about it is as they attacked, the way that the merry men warn each other is by firing arrows down at each other, like within inches of each other, and then yelling right afterwards. Yes. So the arrow, I was like, oh, okay, so it's like a silent warning. And then they yell, Robin! Robin! Warning arrow is down. It's, it was a weird scene.
Did you get that arrow I sent?
I'm right above you, by the way, but I'm going to fire arrows down at you.
But again, the whole fighting in the tree scene, this was worse than the Ewoks fighting the Empire in Return of the Jedi. Also, it was less plausible that they would fight off these Celtic warriors. There's this band of farmers. But then also the most annoying thing is Little John and Fanny. When again he's yelling across, and then Robin has to go and save her, and then he falls into the pit of fire.
Again, those ropes are mighty weak. It looks like it's just a surface fire, but I don't know that a catapult is the right weapon to bring into a dense forest. Like Sherwood Forest is so dense that they can't find Robin's hideout. They're going to drag this catapult through the woods and then try to shoot. That doesn't seem like it would work. I can imagine those big flaming catapult balls hitting the tree like 10 feet away from you and just spraying your archers with flaming fluid doesn't seem like the best weapon.
I don't even understand why trees are flammable. Why not just start a fucking forest fire? Like, why are you bothering with these catapults?
Fuck, smoke them out. Just set the woods on fire. You don't even have to go find them. Eventually they'll come out.
Yeah, and then speaking of smoke, after all this happens, we're just supposed to assume that Robin's dead. But no, he makes a triumphant return, and it's like a scene out of E.T. It's like backlit by some ethereal light, and you see a silhouette emerge, and you've got the heroic music, crescendo. And I'm like, wait, where is this light coming from? Why? Like at least try to convince us that he's dead. Nobody thought he was dead. Nobody was like, oh, end of the movie. That's it. I mean, at that point, it should have been over. It was about an hour and a half at that point. So that would have been a great ending right there. Marion gets pregnant and the sheriff becomes king.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, Will meets back with Robin and a handful of his most trusted aides who survived the assault by the Celts. Instead of attacking Marion, Will informs him of the sheriff's plan to marry Marion and execute Robin's men. Will continues to display anger against Robin, which motivates Robin to question why Will hates him so much. Will then reveals himself to be Robin's younger, illegitimate half-brother. Will's mother was a peasant woman with whom Robin's father took comfort after Robin's mother had died. Robin's anger towards his father caused him to separate from her and leave Will fatherless. Despite his anger, Robin is overjoyed to learn that he has a brother and reconciles with Will.
God, Christian Slater's terrible. Can we? He's not even trying.
Yeah, the only good line he has in the entire movie is when they catapult the guys over the wall, and he goes, "Fuck me, they cleared it." I was like, all right, cool.
Which was ad-libbed, which was totally ad-libbed.
See, so Christian Slater's not bad. It's just the role he was given was terrible.
Again, yeah, I don't think Samuel L. Jackson's a terrible actor, but like he's terrible in the prequels because the director.
Come here, Christian.
Come here, Christian.
But why do they do this in all movies? Why do they surface bury their dead? Don't they realize that the first rain is going to just wash that topsoil away? Now you have all your loved ones just rotting away in the sun.
Yeah, well, I think the idea is that you want to get clear of them before the wolves show up, and so you just let them. It's temporary. It's not. It
looks like you covered them in potting soil. You didn't even try to scrape the ground.
This is war, Big D.
How many lives are you burying, Big D?
You don't leave, just like turds when you're out in the woods. You don't leave them surface laid. Yeah, you got to bury them. You don't lay them surface laid.
I am a once a day, maybe twice a day ablution individual. But when I go camping, my body ceases to function. I cannot poop in the woods.
Yeah, I can testify to that. We've been on camping trips and he just does not shit. It's the weirdest thing.
Yeah, it's the weirdest thing.
Will Scarlett, aside from being a shitty character and perform in a shitty manner, his release by Nottingham makes no sense at all. He says to Nottingham, as he's convincing Nottingham to let him go, he says, "You got nothing to lose. Let me go. I'll go get Robin for you." But that's not true at all. What he has to lose is recon and the entire strategy that he's got. Will now knows about it and can report it back to Robin. This is the dumbest. And so I try to really think about that from the perspective of, this is like if a soldier were captured and he tells the opposing forces after hearing their generals lay out the entire plan, he goes, why don't you let me go? I'll go back over there and I'll kill the president. You got nothing to lose. But honestly,
the dungeon didn't seem like that bad a place. You get a comedy routine. The sheriff walks in. He goes, "Sorry to leave you guys hanging around." He's like, "What would you like, death or torture?" And he's like, "Death." "All right, torture." "What would you like, death or torture?" "Torture." "You get torture too." Come on, man.
On the day of the wedding and hangings, Robin and his men infiltrate Nottingham Castle, freeing the prisoners. As Robin's band originally had planned to free their friends and retreat, Azeem reveals himself and his willingness to fight the sheriff, inciting the peasants to revolt. After a fierce fight, Robin kills the sheriff, but is attacked by Mortiana, who charges with a spear. Azeem slays Mortiana, fulfilling his vow to repay his life debt. Tuck kills the bishop, burdening him with treasure and throwing him out a window. Robin and Marion profess their love for each other and marry in the forest. Their wedding is briefly interrupted by the return of King Richard, who blesses the marriage and thanks Robin for his deeds.
Okay, so we can go back to the history books, and Azeem, basically invents gunpowder here. It doesn't seem like he's got it down pat scientific to what amount of powder will cause an explosion.
Sure.
So their grand plan, if I'm correct here, is to infiltrate the castle.
Nottingham
And
Castle.
then they want to save their merry men who are about to be hung by putting a powder keg strong enough that later on we see it blow up a wall right next to the gallows. Wouldn't they all be dead the second that thing goes off?
Regardless of that, the whole aim of drop hanging is to break the neck. So when they do the first drop on the little kid, Wolf, like he should be dead. Like most of the time it breaks your neck. That's how you die. And even if you do survive it, you're in really bad shape. Like imagine there's a noose around your neck, then your entire body weight is at once thrust upon that neck. Like they make it like all these people are hanging and they make it like it's no big deal. Everyone's dead in this scene.
And I also love how they ignite it with a flaming arrow that hits a thick, wood-walled powder keg and immediately bursts into flames. I'm like, come on, man. How does nobody also see Little John scaling the outside wall, the people dropping the swords? It turns into Robin Hood, Men in Tights. These scenes could be interchanged. It was so comedic.
And I think that's the sad part of the movie is that if you're going to make people wait 2 hours or 2 hours and 10 minutes to get to the grand finale, it had better be one hell of a grand finale. Like you could almost forgive some of this movie if they nailed this fight scene. If what happened inside the castle walls were just some amazing action sequences. And it wasn't even exciting. It was just, I wanted it to be over.
And then they try to win over the townsfolk with Azeem's speech. If you want to be free, join us. The peasants have no reason to follow him. They don't even know who he is.
Save the Alamo.
Yeah, he's a Moor. They're not going to trust him. They didn't see him give Fanny the C-section. The whole crowd, it would have been, I think, awesome if there'd just been this awkward pause and they all look at him like, no, we're not going to join you.
Well, yeah, but again, I'm with Gene on this. The entire fight scene wasn't fun. It looked like Kevin Costner and Alan Rickman had no training whatsoever in their swords play. They're just kind of banging props together. At one point, I think the sword breaks, and both the actors were like, well, do we just keep going? Let's just fucking keep going. It's not good. It's quite terrible. And then Robin Hood stabs Alan Rickman right at the end because Alan Rickman is distracted by the fact that he's about to go and rape Marion. So he stabs him. Then Alan Rickman goes off to die. And then Kevin Costner and Maid Marian proceed to have sex next to the dead body of Alan Rickman. And the witch, right? The witch is dead too.
What? Did I miss something?
All
here?
in the same room.
Hold on.
Are you late for a doctor's appointment?
Wait.
Like what the hell just happened?
Okay,
there?
let's roll this back a little bit because we jumped a bit here. Okay, so yes,
this is the end.
Yes, this
is the end of the movie.
Yeah, so
all of this happens
right
in the final scene.
I think you got some of it confused. So the sheriff now has Maid Marian up in this chamber.
Right.
He has the priest.
Yes.
He's going to force the marriage, and then he has to consummate the marriage. The sheriff, as big a dirtbag as he is, at least he doesn't want to rape Marian until they've had their vows. So he waits. The vows are done. He starts to attempt to rape Marian, tells them, hey, everybody be quiet. I can't do this while everybody's talking. His mother puts a pillow under Marian's head because she wants the rape to be a little more comfortable. And then Robin Hood swings through the window on that ribbon or tapestry, somehow plots the trajectory perfect to fly through that small window. They fight. That's where we are. I don't know where you're getting now towards where.
That's where it happened. Yeah, they fought.
There's no sex scene between Robin and Marian.
At the end of it, there is. At the end, when he kills the sheriff of Nottingham, they go and they embrace each other and start making out next to the dead body of Alan Rickman and
that's
Mortiana.
not sex. Was this the director's cut? There was like some.
Yeah, I mean, what do you expect? They just listen. You can kiss, you can hug, you can embrace. Then go into the room next door and make out. Like you don't make out right there on the floor next to a dead body.
This is how you know the movie is a fail. Is that the epic final battle between the sheriff of Nottingham and Robin Hood was less exciting than Friar Tuck killing the bishop.
Yeah,
Friar Tuck killing the bishop was pretty badass. He's like, you want all this silver? You want some more? Let me help you pack. Here's some more silver. And then fucking throws him out a window. Now that's hardcore. That's gangster.
That was pretty good.
But would it be too hard to give the actors a little bit of training? Because I think we could pull this off. You give us a sword, give us a room with like a picnic table that we could jump up on, and just say, hey, fake sword fight. That's what it looked like. There was no technique.
Big D, we could sword fight. We don't even need swords.
Yeah, we can cross the streams. So Gene and I have both gone to many Comic-Cons together, and there's
two.
Yeah, well, that's more than one. That's many, but there's always inevitably for entertainment at the costume contest. There's always like the Phoenix chapter of the swords fighting.
Like whoa! They're lightsaber. They're a lightsaber team. Right.
Yeah, and they go hard to the hoop on the choreography, the choreography of these, and then I swear to God, it went on like one or two. I'll watch. This thing went on, Gene, for what, like 35 minutes, right?
Big deal. This thing went on and on. There was actually a marriage proposal in the middle of it. One of the lightsaber fighters proposed to another one, and it's like there's only so much you can do with this. But I like that Raj, being a Star Wars fan, left the lightsaber part out of that. It was a sword team. No, these are your dorky ass Star Wars friends.
Did you say it was a lightsaber team?
It was.
Yes.
Yeah, they have teams. They have chapters.
What?
Where they get together and they practice.
Yeah, they do choreography and then they put on shows. And there's
Who goes to these shows?
They look like well, we do apparently. Apparently, several of them we've been to.
But they also have the medieval fighting people in like the cage. You've seen these people, right? They're like wearing full on armor.
Whenever Roger gets himself into a corner where he realizes he's looking weird, he says, "You've heard about these things. You know about these things, don't you? You know what furries are, don't you? You've been to BronyCon."
So we talked about in Raj's speed synopsis, he talked about the death blow against Nottingham, and this is another part where it just doesn't make sense that Nottingham, if he's supposed to be intelligent, if he's supposed to be fairly cunning, he's got Robin Hood with his blade against his chest, and he turns around and tells Marion, "Get ready," and then lifts the blade way above his head. Now he knows that he's outmatched by Robin Hood. Nottingham is not true to the character. It's the epitome of stupid, absolutely ridiculous. And again, on the flip side, you got Azeem throwing his sword. We talk about the sword going into a scabbard. This is not a sword meant for throwing at all. All of this is just wrong, and it's not that hard to, as we mentioned, you can even get some amateurs to come up with some fight choreography that at least makes sense.
And then mix in the fact of the witch getting stabbed. She somehow gets out of a locked room. Then Azeem gets back into a locked room that they couldn't get in before, trying to like bludgeon it down with the statue of the sheriff. How did he get back in the room? Where'd the witch go? Like, how did all this happen?
I'm not sure, but you got to appreciate when she has the spear through her chest and she just goes shuffling off around the corner. That was kind of great. Like it was visually, I just started cracking up at that point. I don't think that was what they were going for, but it was funny.
Yeah, they weren't going for that.
Yeah, so are we done with this? Can we get onto the wipes, or if we said enough about this movie?
Why was Sean Connery in this movie?
Oh, Sean Connery was in this movie to donate to charity.
What?
So I think he made
like a charity.
No, he made both. So he made $250,000 for 2 days on set. But he did donate that. Swear to God, he made $250,000 for 2 days of work. But he did donate his entire paycheck to a charity of his choice, therefore becoming the real Robin Hood of this movie.
And scene.
That's it. Well, now's the time of the podcast where we break out our Shat meters and tell you our scores. If you've never listened to the podcast before, you're missing out, because people are now starting to use the wipe meter in everyday lives. 0 wipes is a perfect movie or a perfect situation. And a 5 wipe movie is the equivalent of pooping in the Sherwood Forest. That being said, we'll start with you, Gene. How many wipes do you give Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves?
Raj, this doesn't happen to me often, but I don't sleep. Like I'm a wide awake person at all times. I'm hyper productive. This movie took me 3 nights to finish. I kept falling asleep. I was totally disinterested. I couldn't believe it went on 2.5 hours. And The saddest part about this movie is they had an opportunity to take a Disney classic, a story that's well known by everybody, and all you had to do was bring it into a live action adult world. Like I said before, the 1938 Errol Flynn version had better acting, it had better action. The only things I like that saved this movie from being a 5-wiper for me is Bryan Adams on the soundtrack and Alan Rickman, the flickers of greatness he had in this performance. So for me, this is a 4-wipe movie.
Yeah, for me, I'm the same thing. This movie is quite terrible. It's even worse when you see the extended cut, and it's compounded by the fact that the toy line was rushed together, and it was just nothing but a money grab. This is the worst of 1990s action, adventure, romantic comedy movies. The great thing about this movie is it did kill the Robin Hood franchise for a while. Mel Brooks' Robin Hood Man in Tights came out after that, which was kind of funny. It's not a great movie, but it was kind of funny. But then they tried to go historical, gritty again in 2010 with Russell Crowe's Robin Hood, and that didn't work. But it looks like Hollywood still hasn't learned its lesson, because aren't they remaking Robin Hood yet again, Gene?
Yes, September 2018 is the expected release date. This one is going to be, as they say, it's going to have more of a Hurt Locker feel to it.
Oh,
they're going to be treating Robin Hood as sort of a militarized anarchist revolutionary is the angle that they're going with. And I think if they can pull it off, it would be the best one to date. Because, yeah, the Russell Crowe one wasn't anything to applaud.
Did they say Hurt Locker? So they're making Robin Hood a jihadist?
No, I mean, it's still going to be, well, basically what it's going to be is he's going to be in Syria crusades again, and it's going to be more to the effect of like he's mobilizing the people, but they're going to look more into the militaristic aspect of it.
He's going to be like the Assassin's Creed of Robin Hood.
So what did you give it, Roger?
Oh, yeah. So this is a 4-wipe movie for me as well.
I'm going to try to campaign here for you two guys.
Uh-huh.
So I watched this movie a week ago, and I was ready to spit fire. I was blazing. And in the 7 days, I have softened, and I've already forgotten 95% of the movie because I want to. It's bad. It's 2 hours long. The film doesn't know what it is. And any of the things it could have been, comedic, historically accurate, serious drama, it doesn't do any of them well. Alan Rickman's funny, but that open mouth grin he does and looking confused at the camera as it zooms in is only funny for a small part. Kevin Costner got a raspberry for it. And this is what I want to try to campaign for. In Willow, our biggest complaint about Willow was there's nothing worse than waste of potential. We had the budget, we had the actors, we had everything to make it a good film. So that it turned out to be a dumpster fire is a bigger failure than a 4. This is without a doubt for me, it's a 5. It's the worst movie. I would watch Willow again.
You're crazy.
No, at least Willow, you had that fantasy component. The witch made sense. Val Kilmer was charismatic and enjoyable. You had the special effects, as bad as it were, at least they tried. This movie did none of that. It is far worse than a 4. This is a 5 wipe. I would go 6 on this. This is the least favorite movie we've had. And a failure to reach your potential is the worst.
I'm going to have to counter that at least in this movie, though, it had a fairly coherent and followable plot. Right. Where I go, okay, if you asked me to describe everything that happened in this movie, I could tell you scene by scene what happens. With Willow, it was all over the place. I'm like, Why are they here? Why is this happening? Nothing makes sense here. And beyond that, with Willow, the casting part of it, here they didn't focus too much on the Merry Men, right? So they they're a background. So you kept the principal actors in the front who kind of at least could carry it. In Willow, they actually, do you remember the brownies?
Yes.
The fucking brownies, dude.
The brownies are terrible. There's actually some brownies in this movie.
Yes. The two dumb Merry
But
Men.
yeah, no, here's why it's not a Willow, it's not the worst. Because Alan Rickman's performance elevates the film, or it takes it to an interesting place. And when he's on screen, it's interesting. There's nothing interesting about Willow.
Okay.
Nothing is interesting.
Alan Rickman is only a small part of this movie. He's not on screen a majority of the time. Val Kilmer, we all agreed, was fantastic in Willow.
I don't know if I was on board with that. He was in the movie, surely. He wasn't great. He wasn't Alan Rickman. This is a 4 white movie. I'm not changing.
Yeah, I got to stick with my 4 as well. It's I reserve 5 for only things that just offended me. Keeping in mind the era that this movie came out, I think that it very much worked for that era. And so with Willow, I hadn't seen it, and maybe I'm biased in that sense because I remember seeing this as a kid and thinking, damn, it's pretty good. And now as an adult, I think it's not that good, but there was still it captured my imagination at some point, and therefore it has some, I'd say a degree more merit.
Yeah.
At least Willow was not 2 hours plus.
So that being said, what if we combine 4 and another 4 and then a 5? What does that give us, Gene?
That you end up with 4.3 repeating. I'd also like to point out that Willow was 2 hours and 6 minutes long.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the extended version of this movie is 2 hours and like 45 minutes. It's ridiculous. So 4.33 is our wipe score average. What does that bring us to, Big D?
This is our 53rd movie we have reviewed. This is now the 49th movie. The only movies that are worse than it are Highlander, 10 Things I Hate About You, Predator 2, and Willow at number 53.
Oh man, now see that's how you could have convinced me.
Oh.
Say, is this worse than 10 Things I Hate About You? I'd say yes.
Fuck it, we can still change. We haven't closed the book.
Yeah, but now we're just doing comparative to where we want to place it.
No. So Gene, you gave it a 4. You gave Highlander a 4, 10 Things a 4, Predator 2 a 4, and Willow a 4.5. So I can't argue on that. You're consistent. But you think this is worse or better than those?
I think that this is worse than 10 Things I Hate About You.
No, this is better. This is better than 10 Things.
So Gene, go 4.25. Mix it up.
No, don't make him change. Listen, don't let him get his way.
You know what? No. I'm thinking about it now, and Okay, so my position here was that I could not give it a 5 with a good conscience. I think I could give it a 4 or 5 in a good conscience.
Yes.
A 4.5.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So you know what I'm gonna do. I'm
gonna go up.
I'm gonna go up to
You're
3.5.
such a dick.
I'm gonna go up to 3.5. If we're changing scores here, guys.
If you can sleep with yourself at night, are you okay with that?
This is a 4 white movie.
Yes.
All right. This would take us to 4.5 on average.
So now it is in that it's tied with that group. So I think that's fair. It's tied at the 4.5 with Predator 2, 10 Things, Highlander. I think that's fair.
Well, all right. So 4.5. I can't believe you let him talk you into changing your score, Gene. I thought you were stronger. Well, with that being said, what is a shout out? It's we're giving shout outs now. What's a shout out?
Smooth transition, Raj.
Thanks.
A shout out is our way of saying thank you for listening, and your way to show your support for the podcast. You just go to shatthemovies.com, scroll down, you'll see a little slider that pops out asking you for your name to get a shout out. Put your name in there, and we will read it on the podcast. This week's shout outs go to Jason.
Jason, he's a hockey player, wears a hockey mask.
The Pretzel.
Much better than his alter ego, the Churro.
The next shout out comes from Love You, Gene, and Big D. Fuck Roger.
Whoa.
Thanks, Mom.
Heiko.
Heiko one day.
And finally, Gypsy Hanks.
That is the younger sister of Colin Hanks, Tom Hanks. That's Tom Hanks' daughter, Gypsy Hanks. Jeez.
All right, and that's our last shout out. Thank you, everyone, for writing in for your shout outs. Again, if you'd like to get a shout out on the podcast, please go to shatthemovies.com, scroll down, vote for some movies while you're at it, and then put your name in the shout out box, and we will read it on the next podcast. Speaking of the next podcast.
Yeah, next podcast. Big D, what are we doing?
So for anybody who's seen Gallagher, I think he was like an 80s comic who used to hit the watermelons. They would always cover the first row of the audience with plastic. This week, you might want to cover yourself in plastic because Roger's going to be spewing all over your podcast and out your headphones.
My watermelon juice?
Yes, because we are doing Star Wars in honor of this week's release of, what is it?
The Last Jedi.
Last Jedi.
In honor of this, The Last Jedi. So the contestants were A New Hope in last place with 18%. Second was Return of the Jedi with 15%. The Phantom Menace, people trying to punk us there, with 18%. And the winner in a landslide was The Empire Strikes Back from 1980.
This is the best movie, guys. This is the best Star Wars movie. It's the only Star Wars movie really worth watching. I'm very excited. All right. Well, this concludes this week's podcast of Shat the Movies. Be sure to follow us on social media and share with a friend. We're everywhere, including Twitter, Sugar Daddy, Sizzy, Kink D, Snapchat, and Instagram. Just follow the handle at Shat the Movies. Where do you find these? Are these actual websites? Are these actual apps?
Yes, they are all actual dating sites.
Sugar Daddy and Sizzy.
Can you guess? Can you guess what Sizzle is?
Oh, I know. I know exactly what Sizzle is.
Oh, that's Sizzle.
What is it?
It's Sizzl. What is it?
Yes. Sizzle tries to match bacon lovers.
Does it?
Yes.
I'd be afraid I'd match with Ted Cruz. That would be gross. We're on Facebook. Just search for Shat the Movies Podcast. Our website is shatthemovies.com, where you can go and vote for upcoming movies. If you want to suggest a movie and a theme, just email us, host@shatthemovies.com. We're everywhere fine podcasts can be found, including iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and YouTube. Be sure to subscribe, and if you stop by iTunes, please be sure to leave a 5-star review. That helps the podcast grow. You can also check out our sister podcast, Shat on TV, and Real Show Spoilers, where we review television series such as Westworld, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, and Mr. Robot. You can check out all the information on the website, Shat on TV or realspoilers.com. On behalf of my co-hosts, Big D, Dick Eber, and Gene Lyons, I'm Roger Roper. Be sure to join us next week for our Empire Strikes Back Star Wars review. Thank you so much for listening. Take care, good night, and good luck.
But it was sweet when they killed him.